Welcome to the Horror Hive channel, where the darkness and unknown come alive. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to never miss an episode of terror. Let's dive into the darkness together. Demonic invasion. Stacy had always felt blessed with her perfect life. She had a loving husband, 2 beautiful daughters, and a comfortable home in a peaceful neighborhood. But one day, everything changed. It started with small disturbances, like objects moving on their own and strange noises in the night. At first, Stacy brushed it off as her imagination playing tricks on her. But as the occurrences became more frequent and intense, she knew something was not right. One night, as she was tucking her daughters into bed, she saw a dark figure darting across the hallway. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Her oldest daughter, Sarah, noticed her mother's fear and asked,
"Mommy, what's wrong?"
Stacy tried to play it off as nothing, but she couldn't shake off the feeling of unease that had taken hold of her. From that night on, the spirit's presence became more and more aggressive. It would slam doors and whisper menacingly in the darkness. Stacy's husband, David, dismissed her fears as paranoia, but Stacy knew what she saw and heard was real. She tried to protect her family, but the spirit was cunning and always one step ahead. As Stacy struggled to keep her family safe, the spirit began to possess her loved ones. Her husband would lash out in anger for no reason, her youngest daughter would wake up screaming in the middle of the night, and her oldest daughter Sarah would become distant, staring blankly into space for hours at a time. Stacy's once perfect life had become a living nightmare, as the spirit played a twisted game of possession, tormenting her and her family. Stacy wakes up in a cold sweat, her heart pounding in her chest. She tries to shake off the feeling of unease that has settled in her stomach, but it lingers. She gets out of bed and goes to check on her daughters, but they are not there. She calls out their names, but there is no response. She begins to feel a sense of panic rising in her chest. She goes to her husband's room and finds him sitting up in bed, staring blankly ahead. He doesn't respond when she calls his name, and she realizes that he is possessed by the spirit. She tries to shake him out of it, but it's no use. The spirit jumps out of him and into her. Stacy feels a cold, malevolent presence inside her, and she can sense that it is trying to take control of her body. She fights back with all her might, but it's too strong. She feels like she is losing herself, losing her mind. In the darkness, she sees her 2 daughters standing in the corner of the room, their eyes wide with fear. They are also possessed. The spirit is trying to take over their bodies as well. Stacy feels a sense of overwhelming despair. She knows that she has to save her daughters, but she doesn't know how. The spirit jumps out of her and into her husband again. He stands up and begins to walk towards the girls. Stacy knows that she has to do something, but she is too weak. She can feel her consciousness slipping away. The spirit jumps out of her husband and into her daughters. They begin to scream and writhe in pain. Stacy can feel their terror and pain as if it were her own. She knows that she has to save them, but she is powerless to do anything. The spirit jumps out of her daughters and into her again. Stacy feels herself being pulled into a deep, dark abyss. She knows that this is the end, that the spirit will claim her and her family forever. She closes her eyes and prays for a miracle. But there is no miracle. The spirit takes her, and her family is lost. Demon Doll. As soon as the little girl, Emily, received the porcelain doll as a gift from her aunt, strange things began to happen in the house. At night, while everyone was asleep, the doll would move on its own, always ending up on Emily's bed. Her parents, John and Sarah, didn't think much of it at first, but as the nights went on, they began to notice that their pets were disappearing. One day, the family's nanny, Missy, failed to show up for work. John and Sarah tried calling her, but there was no answer. After a couple of days, they decided to go to her house, only to find her brutally murdered in the backyard. The police had no leads and the case went cold. But the strange occurrences in the house continued. Emily began to have nightmares, and would wake up screaming in the middle of the night. Her parents noticed that her behavior was changing too. She became aggressive and distant. They were at a loss as to what was happening to their once sweet and innocent daughter. It wasn't until they found the doll standing over Missy's dead body that they realized the doll was possessed by a demon. They immediately called an exorcist, Father Michael, who performed an exorcism on the doll, but it was too late. The demon had already possessed Emily, and it was now using her as a vessel to hunt her parents. Father Michael warned John and Sarah that the demon was too powerful for him to exorcise, and that their only hope was to find a way to break the curse that bound the demon to the doll. They searched for answers, but all they found were legends and myths about cursed dolls, and how once possessed, the demon could never be freed. As the demon grew stronger, it began to manifest itself in terrifying ways. Objects would move on their own, and strange noises could be heard throughout the house. Emily's eyes would change color, and her voice would become deep and menacing. John and Sarah were at a loss as to how to protect themselves and their daughter. They barricaded themselves in their bedroom, but the demon was able to break through the door. It was then that they realized the only way to end the curse was to destroy the doll. With great reluctance, they set the doll on fire, watching as it burned to ashes. As the doll was consumed by the flames, Emily's screams could be heard throughout the house. The demon was finally exorcised, but at a great cost. Emily was never the same again, and John and Sarah were haunted by the memory of what had happened to their daughter, and the demon doll that had destroyed their lives. Reflections of Evil. Once upon a time, there was a small town that was plagued by a mysterious force that only appeared at night. The townspeople would lock themselves in their homes as soon as the sun went down, fearing for their lives. They knew that something evil was lurking in the shadows, waiting for its next victim. It all started with strange occurrences in front of mirrors. People would see their own reflection, but it was distorted and twisted, as if something was trying to break through from the other side. Some even reported hearing whispers coming from the mirrors, but they couldn't make out what was being said. As the nights went on, the occurrences became more frequent and more violent. People began to see their own reflection attacking them, and they would fight back with whatever they could find. But it was never enough. The mirrors always seemed to win, and the townspeople would wake up the next morning with cuts and bruises all over their bodies. The townspeople soon realized that the mirrors were not just reflecting their own image, but something else entirely. They called it the mirror demon, a powerful entity that had found a way to control people through the reflections in the mirrors. It would manipulate their thoughts and actions, making them do terrible things to themselves and others. The mirror demon became more and more aggressive, and it started to take control of people's minds even during the day. People would be walking down the street, minding their own business, when suddenly they would be overcome by an uncontrollable urge to shatter the nearest mirror. They would break the mirror and use the shattered pieces to cut or mutilate themselves. No one was safe from the mirror demon's grasp, and the townspeople were desperate for a solution. They turned to the church for help, and a young priest named Father James was sent to investigate. He quickly discovered that the mirror demon was an ancient devil that had been trapped in the mirrors for centuries. It had finally found a way to break free, and it was determined to claim as many souls as possible. Father James knew that he had to act fast before the demon could claim any more victims. He spent every waking moment studying ancient texts and performing exorcisms, trying to find a way to banish the demon back to hell. But the demon was too powerful, and it seemed to be one step ahead at every turn. Just when all hope seemed lost, Father James remembered an old spell that he had read about in an ancient book of magic. It was said to be able to bind a demon to a mirror, trapping it for eternity. He knew that it was a long shot, but he had to try. With the help of the townspeople, Father James set to work on the spell. They gathered all the mirrors in the town and brought them to the church, where they set them up in a circle around the altar. Father James began the ritual, chanting the ancient words and making the necessary sacrifices. The mirror demon fought back with all its might, but it was no match for the powerful spell. It was trapped in the mirrors once again, never to be seen again. The townspeople were safe, and they could finally sleep at night without fear of the demon. From that day on, the townspeople never looked at mirrors the same way again. They knew that behind the reflection, there was something much more sinister waiting to break free. They made sure to keep their mirrors covered, and they never spoke of the mirror demon again. For they knew that if they did, it would only serve to remind the demon that it was still there, trapped in the mirrors, waiting for its next opportunity to escape. We hope you enjoyed our journey into the world of horror. We strive to bring you the best in horror entertainment, and we appreciate your support. Remember to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode of terror. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in our next story.